ANC will this morning address the media on the outcomes following the party's special national working committee. The party will also announce former Northwest Premier Supra Mahumapelo's successor. The briefing will be addressed by Party Secretary General Mahashule at Luthuli House in Johannesburg. The ANC will also give an update on the status of the upcoming regional and provincial conferences. We will cross live to that press briefing as soon as it gets underway. And for a brief unpacking of the issues of the ANC Special Working Committee meeting, we're joined by our foreign editor, an acting political editor, Sophie Mokoena. Sophie, thank you so much for making the time. What can we expect to come out of Luthuli House today?
Well, of course, all eyes on Luthuli House today, as the party is expected to announce the premier candidate, because remember, formal processes must be followed for the person who is going to be a premier to be sworn in. Now, we were told yesterday, a reliable source, that names were debated, and among those names, you have Job Mohoro, it was Zakaria Tolo, Jerry Machile, Susan Danchi, Mutlalupule Khosho. Jerry Machile told our team at the UN that he didn't avail himself, so there was no debate there.
He's out of the list.
Yes, yeah. And then of course you had other names left, and finally a compromise was reached. Therefore, Job Mohoro apparently is the person whose name is going to be presented.
What do we know about him?
In. Well, of course, he's one of the residents of the Northwest, and he's a former Director General in that province. The technicality currently, he's not an MPL. In other words, he's not a member of the provincial legislature. Therefore, they have to ask someone to resign in the legislature and then have him in the list at the legislature, but I suspect by now his name is with the IEC, and therefore on Friday, that is tomorrow, he is going to be presented as the Premier of the Northwest. And of course the judge is on standby to deal with all those formalities.
If that process proceeds smoothly, what can we expect from a Job Mohoro premiership?
Well, it's difficult to tell, but apparently he is going to be an interim premier, really, you know, being there from now until elections, because the province must go to a provincial conference next year in February. If the provincial conference is successful, there are no issues, there are no court challenges. You know, ANC these days, you can't predict. The person who is going to be elected as the chairperson of the province next year, obvious, his name is going to be presented as the premier candidate for election 2019. Therefore, it's still a long way. He's actually a caretaker premier. You recall in 2008 when Begi was recalled, Ntate Kgalema Motlanthe stepped in until elections, and of course...
So similar scenario, really.
Yes, it's a similar scenario. You'd recall in the Free State, a similar incident happened where the late former Premier Dr. Ivy Matsipe-Kasaburi had to step in when there were quarrels in the province between Mahashule and Terralikota, and immediately after the election and after the conference, a premier was appointed, Zingile. Yeah, you remember him very well.
What announcements will Mr. Mahashule make about the regional and provincial conferences?
ANC is facing serious challenges. The party is under siege in most provinces, in all structures, be at branch level, regional level, provincial level. All the time, people are challenging the decisions, particularly at a time where you have those structures holding BGMs or regional conferences or provincial conferences, because this is a ticket at times to make it to either parliament or the legislature. Therefore, to hold these conferences is a challenge for the ANC. We know that in KwaZulu-Natal, as we speak, there's a pending court case. You look at Eastern Cape, similar court case.
Yep.
You look at Limpopo, we were told yesterday there's a group that wants to interdict the conference after the NEC took a decision that Limpopo can go to a conference. You have a province like Northwest with all the challenges. Free State, yes, they did have a conference, but there are divisions. How do
there are also questions there.
And then Gauteng also, regional conferences. We saw people protesting outside the NEC meeting. Therefore, perhaps Magashule will share some light in terms of how are they going to deal with all these challenges. But the ANC is really under siege. And the challenge here, you have a new president, President Cyril Ramaphosa, trying by all means to ensure that everybody is taken on board. But there seems to be some denial and people who are resisting and who still want to recapture the organization.
We woke up this morning to the sad news of the passing of Ambassador Billy Modise. Who was he?
Well, Ntate Billy Modise was a diplomat. You know very well he was an ANC activist. Pre-1994, he was an ANC representative in Sweden, in the Scandinavian countries. You know the Scandinavian countries supported the struggle. And when he post-94, he became South Africa's High Commissioner in Canada, and later the former President Thabo Mbeki appointed him as the Chief of Protocol. He's the man who was always there.
He was
when
always just such a present figure.
A present figure, a diplomat, a very serious, dignified, orderly man. And it is for that reason when you look at the establishment or the administration or government protocol, they are so professional. Because people like Ntate Modise led by example, and therefore whoever came after him, you know, they all emulated him. So
what was he doing in his later years?
Well, he was a retired person. He was still involved within the ANC Veterans League. Later on, we'll speak to the president of the ANC Veterans League, that is Snuki Zigalala. He was still active. He was still available to share his experience and thoughts, particularly within the structure of the ANC, the Veterans League.
And what can we expect in the coming few days as we mark his passing?
Well, you expect many people to express their views in terms of how they knew him. And among them, we expect a statement from the former President Thabo Mbeki, who worked with him. We expect a statement from people like former President Zuma. I guess he will also share his thoughts. And many other people who worked with him, the ministers. And the President of the Republic, Cyril Ramaphosa, has already issued a statement. He visited him yesterday at Unitas Hospital, accompanied by Minister of International Relations, Minister Lindiwe Sisulu, because he was an ambassador for life. You know, when we are ambassador, once an ambassador, always an ambassador.
Absolutely. Tell us what we can expect in terms of continental and international news.
Well, big story in Addis Ababa today, the summit of the IGAD group of nations, where they will be discussing South Sudan. South Sudan is a mess, is a terrible mess, is a failed state, and people are dying. Kenya and Uganda are struggling with refugees.
It a failed state?
It is a failed state. We are just in denial. It is a failed state. And on the SADC region, the Great Lakes region, meeting in Angola, where they are going to discuss the issue of DRC and Lesotho, Troika. It is a big one also.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks,
international editor and also acting political editor, Sophie Mokoena. Blaine, what do you have on your side?